And you're live.
It's 5:05 and welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. It is slated to be a very busy day across the state of North Carolina as President Donald Trump is set to visit Fort Bragg today to talk with thousands of soldiers and get a firsthand look at all of the various displays of force that they offer out of Fort Bragg. The president is scheduled to speak around 4 p.m. today. His remarks are open to the public for those that have gone through the process of getting a ticket for that. Before the speech, paratroopers and military equipment will be on hand for readiness demonstrations for the president and his team to observe. Tuesday's event is also expected to feature patriotic musical performances along with a celebration honoring past and present service members. I know a lot of folks across the state are heading up there. The event gates do open around 10:30 this morning, so it will be pretty much an all-day affair going on at Fort Bragg this morning. These events come ahead of a military parade that is expected Saturday in Washington, D.C., That is to celebrate the Army's 250th birthday. About 130 vehicles, more than 7,000 troops are expected to take place in the parade that is happening Saturday afternoon. Obviously, Fort Bragg officially returned to its original name back earlier this year, March the 7th, though it is now named for a different Bragg. Private First Class Roland L. Bragg, who was awarded a Purple and a Silver Star for his heroic actions while serving in the Army during World War II. The post was originally named for Braxton Bragg, a Confederate general. It was called Fort Bragg from 1922 to 2023, when under the Biden administration, the name was changed to Fort Liberty as part of a broader push across the United States to strip Confederates and Confederate names from U.S. military installations. Dr. Josh McConney, a U.S. Army veteran and Air Force Reserve member, said, quote, "There are some very famous movies that reference Bragg. You don't even have to attach Fort to that." President Donald Trump, again, will be making his way to Fort Bragg this morning, a busy day across the state of North Carolina. We will have full coverage of his visit coming up tomorrow morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour, and, of course, written coverage and social media coverage over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and through all of our social media channels, whether you follow us on Facebook, X, or Instagram. You can find all of those links, again, on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:08, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Last week, we had details about homeowner insurance going up across the state of North Carolina by an average of almost 20% over the next 2 years. We've got some additional details this morning as it relates to auto insurance. Teresa Opeka, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour this morning. Teresa, I guess we'll call you the bearer of bad news. It looks like auto rates for North Carolina drivers are going to be going up as well over the next couple of years. What's the latest that you're tracking?
Yeah, Nick, thanks for having me. Yeah, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. However, it's not as bad as it could have been. How about we'll put it that way. Mike Causey, North Carolina Insurance Commissioner, released a statement yesterday that his department, along with the North Carolina Rate Bureau, came to an agreement about auto insurance rates. On average, they are set to increase about 5% statewide. Beginning on October 1st, that's for any new policy at that time, and also if you renew after October 1st. Originally, they wanted to go up quite a bit more. So actually, it was about 22% across the board statewide. So it is less, but it is an increase, right? So yes, bearer of bad news. Like we don't need another increase. We talked about homeowners insurance going up last week. Now we've got this. There was going to be a hearing scheduled in September on this, so that was canceled. So that was good news. Other good news with this was that the agreement also saw a 16.3% decrease in motorcycle liability insurance rates. So for anybody who rides motorcycle, that's some good news for them as well.
Teresa, last week you walked us through this process, this North Carolina Rate Bureau, which I guess is accurate to describe as kind of a conglomerate bunch of insurance companies that put in a request They submit that to the insurance commissioner, who is Mike Causey, and then it kicks off this public comment period, kicks off an opportunity where, as you mentioned, there's a potential for some sort of court hearing to decide the rate or a settlement. You mentioned that for homeowners. Is it safe to assume it's that same policy here as it relates to auto insurance as well?
Yeah, it would typically be about the same. Yep. Yes.
And so with some of these changes taking place, did we get any details from either the insurance commissioner or the North Carolina Rate Bureau as to why they were looking at that original 20+% increase that's now been settled down to around 5% statewide?
Yeah, so it did get a statement from the Rate Bureau's Chief Operating Officer, Jared Chappelle. And also Mike Causey, his original statement, he said, but North Carolina, even though the rate has increased, has among the lowest rates in the country, which Chappelle agreed with him. But he said the settlement really won't bridge the gap of what's needed. And what he said, why they were seeking such a large increase is because there was some, costs went up. You had many people's driving habits worsening during the pandemic. And at the same time, often there were, now cars are coming out with new computers, sensors and bumpers, mirrors, things of that nature. And also there's a shortage of mechanics is what he said. So there's also in this report, in our report, we have a data chart that they submitted from the Fed that shows the vehicle repair costs have also risen substantially. So, and there's just many other reasons as well, but those were the main reasons given in this report.
Teresa, I saw some commentary on our Carolina Journal social media last week with the original story we had about homeowners insurance, and a lot of commentary and a lot of coverage on that with folks saying, well, just deny the rate increase, deny the coverage increase from the North Carolina Rate Bureau and some of these insurance policies. But Teresa, we've seen in many areas across the country, specifically out in places like California, where insurance companies, because it's no longer cost effective to provide those insurances, they just pick up roots and cancel everybody's coverage and leave the state. I would imagine you could probably see something similar here in North Carolina if the insurance commissioner just across the board just denied all of these increases.
Yeah, and he has talked about that. You are correct. I think Florida is another state that's been affected by that as well. So yeah, that has been talked about here if something like that was done. So we're trying to avoid that because you don't want to have that happening in the state. But yeah, it's a definite possibility if took a different direction on that.
Teresa, you mentioned some charts and some other quotes and graphics that we've got this morning. Where can folks go and get those details?
Sure, they can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:13, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get a look at the roadways on your Tuesday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good.
It's 5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. North Carolina's Opportunity Scholarship Voucher Program saved state government over $10 million last school year, according to a brand new report out from the North Carolina Department of Instruction. That's DPI, the entity responsible for public schools across the state. The report presented to the North Carolina State Board of Elections last week showed that close to 6,000 students attended a public school for the 24 school year, but switched to the Opportunity Scholarship Program for the 24-25 school year. The total scholarship amount awarded for those students amounted to $34.3 million, while the average per pupil allotment, had they remained in public school, would have amounted to $44.4 million, making a difference, of $10.1 million in state savings. The report underscores this cost savings for the state, noting that the Opportunity Scholarship amounts are generally lower than the average state per pupil allocation for public schools. The report added the caveat that the program's impact on public school funding is complex and varies based on timing, student characteristics, and district-specific factors. State lawmakers have stated for years that any savings in the in-state funds resulting from families choosing the Opportunity Scholarship Program and leaving traditional K-12 public schools, as outlined in the 2023 state budget, would in fact be reinvested back into public schools. Opportunity Scholarships, which are available to all K-12 students across the state of North Carolina, is a state voucher program designed to enable families to choose a private education for their child. Each scholarship is now valued at between $3,400 and $7,600 each year, spread across 4 income tiers ranging from $59,000 for a family of 4 in the first tier to more than $267,000 a year for a family in the 4th tier. Students in the lowest income tier receive first priority for the program. The General Assembly had funded the program at $625 million for the 25-26 school year. The Opportunity Scholarship Program has experienced recent rapid growth since state lawmakers in 2023 made the program universally available regardless of household income. The program grew from some 32,500 students during the 23-24 school year to a whopping 80+ thousand in the 24-25 school year, seeing more than a doubling of individuals taking advantage of that program. And that number is only expected to rise as the Opportunity Scholarship Program continues across the state of North Carolina. We've got some more details on that story this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. In some other statewide news this morning, expecting a busy day in the North Carolina General Assembly. One of the discussions set to take place. And while the minimum age to purchase tobacco products is still while that minimum age to purchase those products is 21 across the United States under federal law, North Carolina is one of just few states across the nation that have yet to align state tobacco laws with 2019 federal regulations. State lawmakers want to see action on legislation that would regulate vape retailers and raise the minimum age for purchasing tobacco and nicotine products to 21, aligning North Carolina with almost every other state in the nation. According to CDC data, only 8 states have yet to raise their minimum tobacco sale age to 21. They are Alaska, Arizona, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Wisconsin. Every other state has already made that change. However, there are 2 bills in the General Assembly that look to make some changes there. It's House Bill 430 and Senate Bill 318. Collectively, they're known as Solly's Law, Sollys. They were introduced in March of this year but have yet to be heard in committee. The legislation would require all tobacco and vape retailers across the state of North Carolina to obtain a retail sales permit and comply with enforcement and training requirements overseen by ALE. That's the Alcohol Law Enforcement Division agents. Representative Donnie Loftus, the Republican from Gaston County, held a press conference on Monday, or actually last week rather, to advocate for actions on this bill. He said at the press conference, quote, "We have waited patiently for these bills to be assigned to the Appropriations Committee. These bills are important and need to be fully discussed and voted on throughout the committee process. Because the proposal includes a funding component, they are not subject to the legislature's May 8th crossover deadline, meaning that they in fact remain eligible for consideration as the session of the General Assembly continues. Supporters say that the regulatory framework would close loopholes that allow thousands of unlicensed vape shops to operate across the state of North Carolina with very little oversight." Representative Loftus noting, "I am aware of support just for raising the age. However, enforcing the other half of this bill is just as critically important in preventing more teens from getting addicted, so far or far worse, dying from vaping." Speakers included students, educators, public health professionals, and grieving parents. Charlene Zorn, the stepmother of Solomon Zorn, whose death from vaping-related complications nearly took 2 years ago, inspired the legislation, gave an emotional plea for the legislation action. She said at the press conference, 717 days ago, my stepson died because of vaping. This Thursday would have been Solomon's 17th birthday. Instead of planning a birthday celebration, I'm standing here talking to you about my son and the problems we have with youth vaping and nicotine in North Carolina. Zorn described Solomon as a healthy, athletic teen with no underlying medical conditions. She said it wasn't until after his death that she learned how deeply vaping had affected his lungs. Under Solly's law, businesses already licensed through alcohol or lottery sales would be covered at no additional cost. Unlicensed vape shops would pay an annual $400 fee, which would fund enforcement, inspection, and training. Josh Dobson, the president of the North Carolina Healthcare Association, said, quote, "I don't think I've seen a bill that would make life better for all North Carolinians more than this bill. Tobacco, be it from smoking or now vaping, is still a number one preventable cause of early illness, chronic disease, disability, and death in North Carolina and our country. It is time to do something about it. This bill is a good place to start." So this is obviously a major debate that is taking place across the North Carolina General Assembly. Lawmakers in both the House and Senate taking this very seriously, and as it stands right now, North Carolina is very much against the norm across the United States, being one of only just 8 states where the minimum age to buy nicotine or tobacco products is still 18. That is currently not in compliance with federal regulations, which changed back in 2019 that raised that age to 21. We will continue to keep an eye on both of those pieces of legislation. We've got some additional quotes and pictures from that press conference last week. It's available over on our website, carolinajournal.com, where you can get the latest there. It's now 5:28 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT, and time for another look at the roadways on your Tuesday morning commute. A look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And you're up.
It's 5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Thanks for spending part of your Tuesday morning with us. Auto insurance rates are set to rise an average of 5% across North Carolina on new and renewed policies starting after October the 1st of this year. State Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey announced the increase in a press release yesterday as part of a settlement with the North Carolina Rate Bureau. The North Carolina Rate Bureau represents insurance companies that write automobile insurance policies in North Carolina and is not part of the Department of Insurance. The agreement also means that a hearing scheduled on a increase request for September the 22nd has officially been canceled. There is some good news, however, as the original Rate Bureau requested a statewide increase of more than 22.5% in automobile insurance rates. They did that in February. The agreement also includes an average statewide 16.3% decrease in motorcycle liability insurance rates. According to the insurance commissioner, he said, quote, with factors such as distracted driving, excessive speeding, and increased automobile repair costs putting upward pressure on insurance rates, I'm happy that we were able to hold the average increase to just 5%. I'm also glad that the agreement will keep North Carolina's average automobile premiums amongst the lowest in the nation. North Carolina Rate Bureau Chief Operating Officer Jared Chappell agrees with Causey that the state has some of the lowest auto premiums in the country, but also stressed that the settlement won't bridge the gap. However, he noted it will help. He said, quote, we're appreciative, as always, to the Department of Insurance for engaging in what can be a contentious process. Insurance carriers are dealing with quite a few cost drivers. For some reason, during and coming out of the pandemic, many people's driving habits worsened. Meanwhile, vehicles today are often rolling computers with sensors in the bumpers, mirrors, headlights, and windshields. Some of those repairs are very pricey, even in something like a minor crash. Chappell included a data chart from the Federal Reserve Bank that shows vehicle repair costs have risen substantially. He also said that the parts are more expensive, towing fees are higher, and there's actually a shortage of auto mechanics in the country. Noting that, quote, anyone who bought a vehicle recently or had repairs done has seen the changes, and insurance premiums have not kept pace. He further noted that it is important that state government allow insurance carriers to charge reasonable rates so that a large number of insurers want to do business in North Carolina and compete on price. He said in an emailed statement to Carolina Journal, quote, North Carolina has historically worked to strike a balance with some of the country's lowest rates and more than 100 companies writing auto insurance policies. The rate increase follows a February 2023 request from the Rate Bureau in which insurance companies requested a statewide 28.4% increase for auto insurance rates. The Department of Insurance reached a settlement resulting in a 4.5% increase in 2023 and 2024. So with that, you are now seeing another increase of 5% starting October 1st of this year. All of this on the heels of homeowners insurance rates increasing on average of almost 20% in many areas across the state by the time we reach June 1st of next year. Those increases were once again part of an agreement between the North Carolina Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey and the North Carolina Rate Bureau, which also represents homeowners insurance companies across the state of North Carolina. So if you were looking for some relief in your monthly bills, whether that be homeowners insurance or auto insurance, unfortunately, you are seeing increases coming from both sides there. We do have some interesting charts in our story this morning over at carolinajournal.com, specifically this one from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that shows some of the prices for vehicle maintenance and repairs There's been a sharp increase in that over the last couple of years. Again, you can find that chart this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 540, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It was a busy weekend in Greensboro, North Carolina for members of the Republican Party across the state of North Carolina. Joining us this morning is the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, Jason Simmons. Mr. Chairman, congratulations on your victory over the weekend. Give us a broad overview of how the convention went down in your eyes.
Well, Nick, it's great to be with you, and it's always a pleasure. We had a great weekend as Republicans from across our beautiful state gathered in Greensboro, North Carolina, to be able to talk about our party's future, but also all of the accomplishments that we've seen, especially over this last election cycle, continuing to make sure that we focus on voter registration, prioritizing getting out the vote, as well as protecting the ballot. So it was a great weekend, highlighted by wonderful speakers. We had our former state party chairman, now RNC chairman, Michael Whatley, in attendance, as well as we heard from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno, and U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. So it was a great weekend, and we heard from all of our great elected officials, statewide as well as federal delegations. So it was a great weekend, and really being able to highlight the successes, but more importantly, the future of our party as we continue to move forward.
Let's talk about that future. Obviously, a lot of eyes are on midterm elections coming up next year across the state of North Carolina, of course, with our U.S. Senate race being on the top of the ballot. But Mr. Chairman, there are major elections taking place in almost every single municipality across the state coming up in November of this year. Does the NCGOP see those races as important coming up this year?
Oh, absolutely. Every election is important, especially making sure that we get good candidates out there and highlighting really the Republican policies of a higher quality of education, making sure that we get our great candidates talking about the successes that we've seen in the economic conditions, making sure to continue to lower taxes, lower regulations, making opportunities for businesses to come in and thrive in those communities, as well as public safety, highlighting the need to continue to make sure that you can set the conditions for education and the economy by making sure that you've got public safety as a priority as well. So we're really looking forward to the municipal elections and highlighting those Republican policies.
It won't be long, just a couple of months into next year, where we'll be dealing with what is likely to be a very contentious primary cycle all up and down the ballot here in North Carolina. A lot of money is set to be flowing into the state next year for the midterm elections. Obviously, U.S. Senator Tom Tillis is one of those candidates that has an election next year. Can you walk us through how the party and how the volunteers across the state are set up and prepared for an event like that next year?
Sure. So as a party, we do have to take a position of neutrality going into any of the primaries. And so per our bylaws, we take that position. But I know that our candidates across the board are going to have a very robust conversation about the direction of our party, being able to highlight those opportunities to support President Trump's America First agenda, and making sure that we've got a great candidate going into the general election to support President Trump and his agenda.
With that being the case, party unity continues to be a major question, not only in the Republican Party, but the Democrat Party as well. You had the opportunity to probably talk with hundreds of individuals in Greensboro over the weekend. Give us your broad overview, your sense of where party unity stands right now within the GOP.
Well, we always are focused as a party, making sure that we've got opportunities to highlight our candidates, highlight our policies, and especially we've got a winning message. You look at where the Democrat Party is today, especially at the national level as well as here at the state, they continue to have failed policies, failed direction, failed message that really the voters of North Carolina, as well as really across the entire country, rejected. You saw it highlighted with really President Biden, supposedly President Biden. We're still trying to figure out who was president, him or the auto pen. But as you look forward, Republicans are united. We understand that we've got to come together, make sure that in our statewide elections, as well as all of our down ballot races, we are focused on electing Republicans to represent us in Washington, D.C., support President Trump and his America First agenda, as well as sending great legislators back to Raleigh to represent us, lowering taxes, public education, public safety.
Jason Simmons, the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:45, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get another look at the roadways on your early Tuesday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
All right, Nick. Thank you, sir.
It's 5:52. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. A busy day across the state of North Carolina as President Donald Trump is set to address a crowd at Fort Bragg coming up around 4:30 this afternoon to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Fort Bragg, which of course is located in Fayetteville, serves as a headquarters for U.S. Army Special Operations Command. Highly trained units like Green Berets and Rangers are based there. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll will also be at Tuesday's event, along with service members as well as veterans and their families. The president has promoted the Army's anniversary as one of the reasons that he is holding a major military parade in Washington, D.C., coming up this Saturday, with members of Fort Bragg taking place in those festivities taking place in D.C. this weekend as well. We'll have full coverage of the president's visit on our website, carolinajournal.com, and of course right here coming up tomorrow morning for you on the Carolina Journal News Hour. In some other news this morning, biotechnology is a growing industry across the state of North Carolina, with leaders from the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech and the North Carolina Biotechnology Center saying last week that expanded workforce training and strengthening partnerships with local universities are key steps to support the sector, which they note has a major national security implication. According to Dr. Michael Rozo, the vice chair of NSCEB, we recognize the growth potential in biotech. We're just at the beginning of an influx of manufacturing demand for these biotechnological products. North Carolina was one of the first states on NSCEB's Biotech Across America Road Tour. During the tour, the commission will meet with lawmakers in various states to discuss investment opportunities and ways to expand the biotech industry within each state. According to Dr. Laura Rowley, the vice president of Life Sciences Economic Development for the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, said, quote, in the last 18 months alone, we've seen $11 billion worth of announcement investments and in the intent to create over 5,000 new jobs. 93% of those will be at the life science manufacturing sites. She noted that this is something that is historic, strengthening us and continues to be strengths as the state moves ahead. She noted that we've created an ecosystem that enables companies that are new to our market, like Gene Tech and Johnson & Johnson, as well as others that have called our state a home for a long time, to make multi-billion-dollar advancements and expansions here. The commission has made recommendations to Congress outlining in their recent report charting the future of biotech, which highlights the importance of the biotech industry to national security. According to Dr. Rozo, the United States is well behind China, which has prioritized biotechnology at the federal level for the last 20 years. Biotech, like AI and semiconductors, should be treated as a national security priority. The report lays out a blueprint for action and investing more than $15 billion over a 5-year term. North Carolina, one of North Carolina's most prominent investors, Fujifilm, headquartered in Tokyo, Japan, has invested $8 billion in the global contract manufacturing organization Life Sciences and Space Center. Half of that, or $4 billion of that, has been invested in the state of North Carolina, and more than 3/4 of that $3.2 billion have been invested in the Holly Spring region, according to the head of government affairs for Fujifilm. Life Sciences CMOs in North Carolina include Novo Nordisk, GeneTech, Amgen, and more. Many of those companies are funded in partly by Job Development Investment Grants, also known as JDIG grants. Both are based in Holly Spring. Amgen broke ground on its expansion in January. We covered that here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. But GeneTech is yet to have broken ground on their facility, and if plans for the company moves forward, that would be the first GeneTech footprint in the state of North Carolina. Workforce development programs in the state would provide necessary staff to support investments at many of those companies and more as they look to make and build and produce manufacturing facilities in the state of North Carolina. Officials say developing workforce programs focused on biotech manufacturing could help strengthen North Carolina's position in the industry, which has been identified as important to national security as well as economic growth. You can read more details on that story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. That's going to do it for a Tuesday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.